hoping that we could come to an agreement before the exit date of the UK from the EU. Regrettably, there were major differences of opinion between Ghana and the UK in respect of the content of that agreement. The position of the UK had been that since we already had an agreement with the EU, of which UK was part, in their own view, if they were exiting from the EU, then the principle of continuity ought to be invoked, meaning that the provisions that were underpinning the agreement between Ghana and the EU should now be applied between Ghana and the UK. And we had a major disagreement with that position of the UK. And then we recognized that having exited from the EU, the UK had a major challenge to negotiate individual trade agreements with every country that the EU had a relationship with. So we understood the challenge that they had, and that was why they were using this continuity principle. But the reason why we disagreed with the principle of continuity was that the EU-Ghana agreement that I've just referred to, it's inconsistent with the provisions of the customs union of ECOWAS. Technically speaking, we are now a member of the ECOWAS customs union. And if you're a member of the ECOWAS customs union, you have no flexibility to negotiate outside the customs union without the concurrence of the customs union. And the same thing that applied to the UK. When the UK was part of the EU, they had absolutely no authority to negotiate outside the EU. So our position was that if we now have to sign an agreement with the UK, then it has to be consistent with the provisions of the ECOWAS Customs Union. And we went back and forth for almost a year at the level of technical consultations until December 2020, when the UK was just about to exit. And we wanted to avoid a trade disruption between Ghana and the UK. So I decided to escalate the discussions to a higher political level to see whether there could be a breakthrough. Because we were proposing that we use an original text of a regional economic partnership agreement that had been signed between the EU and then ECOWAS. We felt that that regional text should be the basis for the text of the agreement between Ghana and the UK, so that it will be consistent with the requirements of our customs union. So when I escalated the negotiations to the level of my counterpart, the Right Honorable Liz Strauss, in December, the last week of December, she graciously agreed that as an exception to their principle of continuity, they would accept our position to use the text of the Regional Economic Partnership Agreement as the basis for the new bilateral Ghana-UK agreement, so that once it enters into force, then it will not be difficult to convince ECOWAS to also adopt that. So basically, where we are now, the President has given executive approval for the agreement. We've forwarded the agreement to Parliament. The UK government has signaled that on the 2nd of March, both countries will sign the new Ghana-UK agreement, and then it will enter into force hopefully on the 5th of March. So that's where we are.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that. The bane of every finance minister in Ghana, from independence to yesterday, is the problem of our imports outweighing exports, particularly rice and sugar. And rice in the sense that we have comparative advantage to produce it. We are spending close to $1 billion in importing just these two commodities annually. That affects our balance of payments, that affects the exchange rate and the stability of the city. As a minister responsible for the economy, what plans do you have to expand our exports and to reduce our imports? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, I did not intend to create a problem for our president. I thought I heard the Honorable Minority Leader talk about me being responsible for the economy. If I heard you right, then...
responsible for trade and industry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I didn't say finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, you are absolutely right. There's a major problem that has confronted this country for decades, for over a century, in terms of the number of products that we import into our country which could be produced locally. And as the Honorable Member of Parliament, the Minority Leader indicated, currently between these three commodities, sugar, rice, and then poultry, we're almost close to $1 billion of imports for absolutely no reason, because we have the local capacity to be able to do import substitution and produce these commodities. But this underpins the decision of His Excellency the President for Ghana to launch a comprehensive program for industrial transformation, which my ministry has been leading. And basically, this transformation program is anchored on two parallel tracks. First, to ensure that we produce to export, and secondly, also that we produce for the purposes of import substitution. And so we have very comprehensive interventions that we have put in place, and I'm sure as we go on in this exercise, these matters will come up. Very comprehensive transformational interventions that is building the capacity of local businesses to be able to import substitute and also even produce these products for export. So we are already on the right path, and that's the basis for our industrial transformation agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman, thank you. Honorable nominee responsible for trade and industry, you are largely responsible for the implementation of the present flagship initiative, 1D, 1F, one district, one factory, which for all intents and purposes is intended to provide opportunities for many people and and to lead our effort in industrialization. Can you provide us how many so far and give a regional background in the Upper East, Upper West through the 16 regions? How many 1D, 1F have you been able to initiate and where and the status of it? Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, again, I think it is appropriate for me to indicate that the One District, One Factory initiative, which has been led by the Ministry of Trade and Industry, is one of the most revolutionary interventions to have been introduced in our country since independence. It goes to the core of bringing industry and development to the doorstep of the ordinary people. And that is why we've pursued with aggression this whole program of One District, One Factory. Currently, we have 232 1D1F projects that are at various stages of implementation. And contrary to some of the comments that have been made, that the 1D1F is an attempt just to brush up existing companies. Indeed, whilst the program implementation framework allows for existing companies to be 1D1F companies, but if you look at the statistics, out of the 232 companies, only 64 are existing companies and 168 are new companies. Now, the breakdown is as follows. Projects currently operating as 1D1F is 76. Projects under construction is 107. And then projects ready to commence construction within the first half of this year is 49. And so far, out of the 232 projects, 56% are agro-processing projects, 22% general manufacturing, 5% meat processing, primary agriculture is 4%, and there are other industrial enterprises which constitute 13%. Through the intervention of the 1D1F, 139,331 direct and indirect jobs have been created by the 76 companies that are already operational. 285,915 additional direct and indirect jobs are projected from the projects that are under construction. Mr. Chairman, through this initiative, we've been able to mobilize 2.3 billion Ghana cedis from local financial institutions. Government has provided interest subsidy payment to support 213 interest subsidy support of 213 million Ghana cedis. This is meant to de-risk the project for the banks because the interest subsidy then makes it easier for them to become more profitable. And in addition to that, 603 million import duty exemptions have been granted to 37 1D1F companies having come through this honorable house. Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, I do not have with me the regional background, but this is the status.
So can you speak with certainty that as revolutionary as you describe it, it's in the Upper West region as in the Upper East region? Can you speak with certainty? There are 1D initiatives in Bolga, Navrungu, Zebula, or any part of it, or in the Upper West region, whether Lambuse or Tumu or where in these two regions, I want to know whether the revolution have gotten there. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated, I do not have regional breakdown with me, and I think before this honorable house, it is appropriate that I give accurate information.
Chairman, we know that the last time he came to Parliament, the Upper West region did not benefit from it. There was one in the Upper East region, and our follow-up, there's no significant development in it. But let me now take you to another area. After you've done well with the president, which was initiated by late President Mills, this Free African Continental Trade Agreement, which is headquartered now in Ghana. Now, trade liberalization, particularly, I'm going to use Nigeria as a case study. Dangote cement is in Ghana. Simaf, Moroccan, is in Ghana. Many Ghanaian entrepreneurs cannot break through the Nigerian market. And you are aware that there is what the Nigerians call the prohibited list of imports from Ghana into Nigeria. I know in the last couple of months you've been trying to manage the problems associated with the GIPC limitation, even for retail trading within our country by foreigners and in particular Nigerians, which almost led to some diplomatic problems between our two countries. Now, Jata cement is local. There is a local Ghanaian who is doing well to produce cement. What will you do to improve the competitiveness of the Ghanaian entrepreneur to match with their counterparts in Nigeria and beyond? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I indicated earlier on that to a large extent, under the leadership of our President and also under my own leadership leading the ministry, we've been ahead of the coming into force of the AFCFTA. Because if time permits, and I go through some of the industrial initiatives that we've been implementing in the last 4 years, the question that has been put by the Honorable Minority Leader is answered by the decision that we are taking ahead of the AFTA to introduce initiatives that will enhance the local capacity of our businesses, preparing them to be able to export not only to ECOWAS, but to the wider African market. I don't want to just dwell on the 1D1F, but the 1D1F is a major intervention that would enable our companies to be able to produce to meet the requirements of AFTA. But beyond that, as I said, there are other interventions which are already in place. But in addition to that, Mr. Chairman, specifically following the start of trading, we've already initiated a national program of action to identify different categories of Ghanaian companies that we would support to take advantage of AFTA. One category are companies that are already exporting to Africa. So these are low-hanging fruits. So we are distilling information on these existing companies. All we are doing is to make sure that we enhance their capacity to be able to sell more. Then there's another category of companies that are exporting currently, but not necessarily to Africa. So it means that they have the capacity to export. And so we are also helping them to identify specific products that they can now produce to export to the African market. And obviously also new companies that we can incubate specifically to target AFTA. So there's a lot that is already going on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman, that's appreciated. I'll take the nominee to the manufacturing sector of Ghana. What's its contribution to our GDP? But I want you to respond relative to a lopsided industrial development in Ghana. Beyond Tema and Accra and little portions of Ashanti region. And Chairman, we all can use it as an example. When it's 4:30 p.m. to 5:30, you see in the industrial area, maybe North Kaneshi, large army of young people come out, heading home. It means they've had a job to do and they have earned an income. Beyond Accra and Tema, I don't see that anywhere in the Brown Half region. I don't see that in the northern region, in the upper east, upper west region. And my faith is that this is how we can address the unemployment challenge. And probably you must have some thinking on light manufacturing, the light manufacturing industry. What plans do you have for that to address the growing unemployment in our country? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, even at the risk of sounding repetitive, I think it is important that I go back to the point that I made earlier on, that the government has already embarked on this very comprehensive program for industrial transformation. And I agree completely with the Honorable Member that currently, beyond Accra and Kumasi, there is little evidence of significant industrial activity. But that's the whole point about having a program that decentralizes industrial development, about the 1D1F in particular. But it also goes beyond the 1D1F, recognizing that the 1D1F typically may be medium-sized companies. We have also embarked on a program to support micro and small enterprises. And so as I speak now, we have established 67 business resource centers that will cover all the districts in Ghana. And these business resource centers, 37 of them are already operational, and the other 30 will be completed again by the middle of this year. Now, these BRCs, or Business Resource Centers, are one-stop enterprise support centers that are supposed to deliver business development services to micro, small enterprises throughout the country, so that what the Honourable Member is referring to will become a thing of the past. So if you are in maybe Tamale South, it's developed to the extent that we cannot necessarily put them in this category. But if you are in Bunkugu or any other part of the northern regions, or in Ashanti, or in the western north, any part of the country, now you have the opportunity to go to a business resource center that will provide you with a full complement of services to enable you either start your business or enhance the capacity of your current enterprise activity. So basically, what you're asking for, Honorable Member, is exactly what these business resource centers are doing.
Chairman, I want to just, for now, integrated customs management system, and you know, at the policy and institutional level, I support you that trade facilitation is not a function of finance or the Ministry of Finance. I think that under our WTO obligations and protocols, you should be leading matters of trade facilitation. The transition from GCNet to UNIPAS is likely to occasion a judgment debt for the country, because GCNet was really providing those services, probably ably, I've heard some discrepancies in terms of numbers. How is revenue faring and how did revenue fare under the GCNet? You want to explain the circumstance that led to the termination of the GCNet agreement, which is likely to visit a judgment debt on our country? I thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, before I proceed to answer, I respectfully have a different opinion from the minority leader about the fact that what we've put in place as a new trade facilitation system is going to incur judgment debt. But let me give a little bit of a background to this. Without doubt, trade is the engine of growth for every country. And this explains why the most powerful economies of the world also happen to be the most powerful trading nations. So there is no debate about the value of trade. Now, when you talk about trade, then is the facilitation of trade, the systems and processes that you put down in your country that allows trade to move on easily, freely, both import and export. Now, if you look at our trade facilitation space over the last decades, 4 decades, since import licenses were abolished in the 70s, this space of import-export has been characterized by a multiplicity of service providers, which I describe as a spaghetti bowl of service providers. You have so many companies that are providing different types of services, very often not fully integrated and coordinated with each other. This, regrettably, has been one of the major reasons why there have been leakages in our trade facilitation landscape, and then by extension also our revenue mobilization space. And when we took office in 2017, and remember, I think we are in the same club, trade ministers. I have been there before, and so I know about Designate, and I knew about the destination inspection companies. But I was surprised to find out when I took office in 2017 that this multiplicity of service providers still existed. And in addition to Designate and Westblue, you had 4 others, bringing the total to 6 service providers who were providing different types of services. Now, the fact that these service providers are using digital platforms that do not speak to each other, obviously it cannot generate maximum operational efficiency. And so I took a bold decision that we needed, for once in our country, to put in place a comprehensive, fully integrated, end-to-end trade facilitation system that will do a number of things. Provide operational efficiency for imports and for exports. Secondly, to enhance revenue mobilization. Also, deepen our security arrangements for both exports and then imports. And so we went through the public procurement process, and then we selected a company that is a local company, but that is working together with the Korean Customs Service to deploy a new technology called Unipass. And in spite of all the noise and the negative comments about this bold effort that we took, the statistics now is clear. about the value of this new intervention. And with your indulgence, I'll just give you just a few numbers. Now, the UNIPAS, or the Ghana rendition of it, which is called ICOMS, Integrated Customs Management System. Now, this ICOMS was fully deployed in June 2020, when a lot of noise was being made. Now, in July, there's after only 1 month.
You mean controversy? You mean controversies are surrounding the change in initiative?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
You were saying noise. I thought you wanted controversy to better fit the situation.
Oh, okay. Yes, controversy surrounding the introduction of the UNIPAS.
Chairman, so that the nominee is not equating public protest and legitimate civil society concerns as noise. That's what the deputy leader wants him to avert his mind to.
Okay, very well.
But once at it there, is there an action for judgment debts? Is it the case that government owes West Blue for non-payment of its services? Thank you, Chair.
Respectfully, Honorable Leader, I think it is appropriate that I put it in the right context. So I'm saying that after the first month of deployment in July, there was an increase of 23% over the previous year, 2019. This is against the background that we were in the heart of the COVID experience, which obviously then meant that there was a lot of trade disruption. In the second month, in August, there was a 31% increase. In September, 34%. In October, 34%. In November, 25%. In December, 19%. So, Mr. Chairman, how is it that a system that had been described in very negative terms could, upon deployment, immediately increase our revenue mobilization to start? It's never happened in this country before.
Minister, it's not about increases in volumes of trade and volumes of what was imported.
No, it's
a function of CIF, many of it. I'm saying that 2019, just for you to take note, there was no COVID in 2019. So you probably will be referring to 2020 figures. But I get your percentages, 23, 31, 34%. But I'm saying that couldn't it be a function of volumes?
Respectfully, Minority Leader, COVID was in 2020. And I'm suggesting to you that with the decrease in the volume of trade, you could not expect logically that you would have increased volumes and by extension increased value. This is, I think, logic. So the 2019 figures I'm referring to is a basis for comparing the deployment of the system in 2020 as against 2019, where you had the system you are referring to, GCNet, West Blue, and all these other. I think it's material information. Now, if you add the differences in accumulation or escalation of revenue mobilization, you are talking about just within a period of just 6 months, that's from July to December, we earned more than 1.6 billion Ghana cedis. How does a system that does not work in 5 or 6 months generate additional 1.6 billion in revenue? Something that has not happened before in our country. So I think that this is a material fact. But I can now go on.
Chair, with your leave, Honorable Nominee. So from what you just saying, the figures you just given out, your suggestion is that, but for COVID, the figures would have even gone higher.
Exactly so. Mr. Chairman, I'll now proceed to respond to the issue of potential judgment debt. And again, it's a serious matter that he has raised. And I need to give you the historical background. And that's the only way you can explain whether there's the potential for judgment debt or not. Now, the original agreement between the government of Ghana and Designate was signed on the 2nd of October 2000. But this agreement did not become effective until around 2003. Now, the agreement provided for a 10-year period of service provision. So that was supposed to take us from 2003 to 2013. Now, before the expiration of the agreement in 2013, there was a first supplemental agreement which was signed on the 26th of August 2013, giving an extension of 5 years to the service provider, the Designate. So, ostensibly, this supplemental agreement was supposed to end in 2018. Strangely enough, in October 2016, 2 months before the end of the term of office of the previous government, 2 clear years before the expiration of this agreement, first supplemental agreement, because it was supposed to end in 2018. There was a second supplemental agreement signed on the 28th of October 2016, extending an unexpired term of an agreement for a further 5 years to end in 2023. Obviously, this calls for some kind of inquiry. An agreement that has 2 years unexpired term is now extended for a further 5 years from the time that it is supposed to end in future to 2023. So, on assumption of...
But you can keep it there. I should understand that if you have your copy of that agreement with you, which was signed in August, I should recall that I facilitated the first part of it, but in the extension, I said 10 years, but after 5 years, subject to an assessment. You don't find that in that agreement? It was there.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, in what you are holding, we said that if you pursued it for those number of years, renewal was only subject to an assessment. And I recall bringing in some experts from Belgium to have examined the whole GCNet trade facilitation regime. But it's intriguing, the details that you have shared. But I'm saying that go more into the agreement that you signed. There was a condition that it should be subjected to an assessment for an extension. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. That is not in dispute. But I am submitting that after the assessment has been made and you make a decision that you would extend it, it is strange that 2 years on an unexpired term of an agreement, you extend it for a further 5 years. So the issue that you are advancing is not in contention about the fact that an assessment had to be made. And the assessment was made. So Mr. Chair, I think that's not the issue.
So was the extension done before the assessment? The extension, was it done before the assessment?
I would suppose that it was done after the assessment.
Chairman, I'm just putting it on the record. If you read the 2013 agreement, it was extended for 10 years. So 2013 for 10 years would have been 2023. But there was a provision in the agreement which said that because technology changes very fast, after 5 years into the agreement, you renew subject to an assessment. I just wanted that to be part of the record. And if you doubt it, you can refer to the agreement that you are holding, that there was dedicated provision for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just also to put it on record, that there's no dispute about the requirement for assessment. I was just saying that if you have an unexpired term of 2 years on an agreement, and you give an extension of 2 years after the term of expiration, which is in the future, it's an interesting case in law. That's all that I'm saying. But let's escalate the matter. So here we are. We come into office in 2017. Now we realize that the supplemental agreement that was signed, both the first and the second, to all intents and purposes ought to be construed as international agreement, because SGS, which is the majority shareholder of Designate, it's a foreign company and has majority shares in the Designate. And so there was a requirement in law for that supplemental agreement, both the first and the second, to have been submitted to Parliament, and that was not done. Secondly, Article 11.3 of the original agreement signed in 2000 that I referred to granted government the right to early termination, which is a standard clause in many.
Was the 2000 agreement submitted to Parliament for approval?
No, because at that time, that provision in law
no, I just want to know, was the 2000 agreement brought to Parliament? Thank you.
There was no requirement. Yes. So, based on these two factors, the agreement, the two supplemental agreements themselves are void in law. And so, under normal circumstances, we ought not even to have operationalized the agreement. But basically that was history. But for us to proceed then on the basis, having found out the shortcoming, and to continue with that in itself will be further violating the law. And as I said also, the provisions of the original agreement gives the right of government to early termination upon the payment of appropriate compensation, as every agreement provides. So if Designate or West Blue, as the honorable member was referring to, decides to go to court, we'll be ably represented there, and we'll look at the merits of the case.
Yes, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to my boss, the honorable nominee. You gave me my first political appointment as your PA, and I will eternally be grateful for this opportunity. You have done a lot as the Minister for Trade, one district, one factory, implementation of AFTA, among many things. I, however, have an from Ejuso Traditional Council to your kind notice, and it's to do with the encroachment of free zones enclave in the Ejuso area, and I wish to demonstrate that on the, please, the second one. The second one, before this one. Good. So, sir, this is 1,090 acres of land that was given to free zones sometime in 2002. Unfortunately, 18 years on, not much has been done there, and people have been building. So all the dotted areas represent, no, go back please. All these areas represent different structures that people have put on there. The colors represent different levels of construction, from completion to lintel to foundation. Now, when we worked, it's about 1/3 of the total area, and I've been asked to bring to your notice and seek your comment on the matter. Respectfully, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I fully understand the position that the honourable member finds himself, being the newly elected member of parliament for that particular constituency which falls in that traditional area, that you will bring this concern of the people of the traditional area to our notice, particularly to the notice of this honourable house. Mr. Chairman, the problem of encroachment is a major one, not only for the free zones land, but as we know, all over Ghana. Now, our view is that there are a number of options to deal with encroachment. First, you can erect physical structures around the particular property to limit the potential for encroachment. We are talking about an acreage of over 1,000 acres. So although that is a possibility, the expense involved is significant. And so that has been a major concern to the Ghana Free Zones Authority, limiting the use of that option. The second option is to admit that the encroachment has already taken place and to then regularize the actions of the encroachers and then cede the encroached acreage to the encroachers upon payment of compensation, appropriate compensation, those who were already on the land. We've looked at that option. We have not totally discounted, but we've also not taken a firm decision on that matter because this is public land, and for whatever reason, it is strange that for the project that was to be executed for that traditional area, that you have residents within that area who would then do such a thing as encroaching on those lands. But as I said, it's already happened, and we are investigating that. When the Free Zones Authority realized the extent of the encroachment, they engaged the services of a surveyor to assess the extent of the encroached area, so that an appropriate decision will be taken. Now, I'm just basically to end on this note that we feel that the way forward is to accelerate the development that is intended on the proposed site, and that automatically then also serves as another option of warding away encroachers. And we are continuously engaging with the chiefs and people of Jesu to sensitize them on the need for the traditional rulers and then the people of Jesu themselves to protect that property. So basically, it's not been left in abeyance. It's a matter that is being seriously addressed. So, Honorable Member, I think you can convey this to the traditional rulers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister, I want to follow up on this one. I've been actively involved in it from the beginning. When I was at DVLA, became a member of Parliament, Committee on Roads and Transport, we visited it. Let's be clear. Does the Ministry of Trade wish to do anything on that side? It's been 19 years. There's a conflict of the personal needs versus the public need. Does the Ministry of Trade or Free Zones Board wish to do anything on the land? And when are they going to do it?
Honorable Chair, I agree with you with the sentiments that you have on this matter. But I think you would appreciate that this matter is similar to other cases around the country where pieces of land have been acquired by government, in some cases through compulsory acquisition, but they have not been developed for that purpose. Multiple cases. The problem has always been a question of resources, because all over the world we know that industrial enclaves or industrial zones or industrial parks are a major instrument for industrialization. So it is perfectly in order and it is appropriate for government to acquire or develop land banks. We talk about this all the time. To develop land banks that can now then become available to potential investors. But the point is that once you acquire the piece of land, you pay compensation, and it's a lot of money. And now you have to develop the land. And so it has purely been a question of resources. But that has informed the new policy that I have adopted on assumption of office in the first term of the MPP government, that it is not sustainable for government to continue through the free zones to be acquiring land banks when they do not have the capacity to mobilize resources to develop these lands, as the current matter before us speaks to. And so our position now is that let's provide incentives for private sector developers to engage in the exercise of developing these land banks, and then government supports them to ensure that that they survive. So this is currently the policy, but this is an old acquisition.
Chairman, if the nominee, back to this, if you have the constitution with you, Article 25 and 6, let it guide you with what Chairman said. You acquired it for a certain purpose. Is it being used for that purpose? If it is not being used, let it revert back to the original owners. That's what the Constitution provides for. And what you've lost out already, count it as lost. Put what is remaining into use. And my view is that industrial park, you can start developing it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For want of time, I didn't want to veer into other areas that we are working on. But again, when I talk about our industrial transformation agenda, it's not just one D1F, and so fortunate people just only refer to one D1F. But another key pillar of this transformation agenda is to develop industrial parks around the country. We call it the one region, one park. And as I said, this is in collaboration with the private sector. So as I speak now, this land in question that the minority leader is referring to has now been incorporated into a new project which is called the Greater Kumasi Industrial City and Economic Zone, which is a 4,500-acre initiative to be developed by private sector and which will now incorporate the land under question. And this is going to be the next major industrial enclave after Tema. Because let's understand that the Ashanti region, and for that matter, that center where it's being developed this as an industrial, connects 6 or 7 regions in Ghana. Greater Accra, Ashanti region, Western North, part of Central region, part of Eastern region. Is also the transit corridor to the Sahelian countries. So we cannot be concentrating our industrial agenda only in Accra and Tema. So this major initiative would now incorporate this site under question. So it's very much along the lines that the minority leader is referring to. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, let me convey the assurances of the Ejoso Traditional Council that we are firmly behind you on this project and we want to see the project going on. But the opportunity calls for the delayed takeoff of these projects. And I'm happy that you have referred to the 4,500 acres in the Greater Kumasi area for the industrial city, which also happens to be in the Ejoso constituency. The delayed takeoff has resulted in the denial of legal rights of the local people to even farm on these lands. How soon are we likely to see companies setting up at the free zones enclave to provide jobs and industrial opportunities for the communities?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I do not want to give a specific answer in terms of time, but I'm sure the Honorable Member of Parliament has just taken office. If he consults with the traditional leaders, and then also we would be glad and pleased to work with him so that we can get some certainty in terms of timelines. Because as I've explained, this is not about government. This is about government facilitating and providing incentives to the private sector to undertake this project. So as I speak now, engineering designs have been conducted. All the site plans and the environmental assessment is being done. So a lot of work is being done. This is going to be one of the biggest projects to be implemented in terms of industrial activity in our country. So obviously it takes time. And we are also working on the mobilization of resources to pay for compensation. So it's work in progress.
Finally.
And it's been part of the budget statement, I think, in the last year. Thank you.
Finally, the industrial, and I want to assure my boss that I'm ever ready to partner with him to carry out this program. Industrial city projects and economic zones come with provision of certain amenities like water, extension of electricity, and good roads, especially within the enclave. So far, all the allocations that we have there, the 1,090, there's a second diagram which talks about the Greater Kumasi area. This is almost about the 4,500 acres you spoke about. And then also the 400 acres for Buankra Inland Port. They do not have the social amenities I referred to, like good roads and electricity, which of course will serve as incentive for potential investors into those areas. Please, can we have your assurance that we are going to have an extension of the supply of these amenities onto these allocations? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, you have the assurance, honorable member, and I think this is basic project development. You cannot talk about such a big project without providing off-site infrastructure. So the engineering studies that I'm talking about has actually been in respect the off-site infrastructure. The off-site infrastructure includes extending water, electricity, telecommunication services. All those things are part of the off-site infrastructure. And the last mile infrastructure will then be undertaken by the anchor tenants who come into the industrial city. And so I think it goes without saying that a big project like this has to have all the amenities for it to succeed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.